I was 7 months pregnant when I discovered my in-laws were secretly selling the house I built for them with my inheritance money. The real estate agent called me by mistake, asking if I wanted to update any of the listing information about my house. I stood there, frozen in my kitchen, hand resting on my swollen belly, while she cheerfully told me they already had 3 potential buyers interested in the $850,000 property. The same property that had cost me $430,000 of my dead parents' money to build. The same house I'd never legally transferred to them because they kept forgetting to sign the final paperwork. The same in-laws who were coming over for dinner that night, who had hugged me yesterday and told me how excited they were to be grandparents. I hung up, took a deep breath, and did something I'd never done before. Instead of confronting them, immediately I called a lawyer, updated. Holy crap, I wasn't expecting this post to blow up overnight. I've been reading your comments with my morning tea. Decaf, thanks pregnancy. So many of you are asking if my husband knew about the sale. I'll get to that, I promise. And yes, I'm definitely keeping track of every conversation and document. Would you have confronted them immediately or done what I did? For context, I'd lost both my parents in a car accident 3 years ago. One rainy night, one drunk driver, and suddenly I was an orphan at 32. They weren't wealthy people, but they'd been careful with money their whole lives. My dad was an electrician who worked overtime for 30 years. My mom managed a small clothing boutique. They left me around $480,000, their life insurance, retirement savings, and the sale of their modest home. It wasn't a fortune by any means, but it was enough to change my life. Michael and I had been married for 4 years when my parents died. We'd been saving for our own house, a little craftsman with a backyard where future kids could play. But we were still about $150,000 short, and housing prices in our area kept rising faster than our savings. My in-laws, Robert and Diana, had been renting the same 2-bedroom apartment for 12 years. Every family dinner featured at least one complaint about their landlord, the noisy neighbors, or how they'd never be able to retire without the burden of rent. When Diana cried at my baby shower about how she'd always dreamed of hosting Christmas in a real family home, something in me broke. Maybe it was pregnancy hormones, maybe it was missing my own parents so desperately, or maybe I just wanted to be loved by my husband's family the way they claimed to love me. We could build them a house, I suggested to Michael that night. With my inheritance. A small place, nothing fancy, but something they'd own outright. Michael was stunned. That's your parents' money. You don't have to do that. I want to, I insisted. Family helps family, right? That's what your mom always says. God, I was naive. So we did it. I found a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style house plan, bought a small lot in a decent neighborhood 20 minutes from us, and hired a contractor recommended by Michael's cousin. I spent hours with Diana picking out flooring, countertops, and fixtures, always steering her toward mid-range options when she'd point to the premium selections. The maple cabinets are just as nice as the cherry, I'd say, or this quartz. Looks exactly like the marble but costs half as much. By the time we finished, I'd spent $430,000 of my inheritance, nearly 90% of what my parents had left me. The remaining $50,000 went into a savings account for our baby. No dream house for us anymore, but the look on Diana's face when we handed her the keys on her 60th birthday. Worth it, I thought. This is ours? Really ours? She kept asking, tears streaming down her face. Robert actually hugged me, which had happened exactly twice before in our relationship. All yours, I confirmed. We just need to finalize the deed transfer. The lawyer's preparing the documents. Those documents sat on their dining room table for 3 months. Every time I asked, there was an excuse. We haven't had time to review them. Robert needs his reading glasses. We'll do it next week. Promise. Looking back, the red flags were as bright as stadium lights, but I was too busy painting the nursery and managing my high-risk pregnancy to see them. When Ella, the real estate agent, called me that Wednesday afternoon, thinking I was the homeowner, my first instinct was to confront Robert and Diana immediately. But something stopped me. Maybe the baby kicking, reminding me I had more than myself to protect now. Instead, I called Patricia Winters, a lawyer friend of my Aunt Judith. I explained the situation, my voice shaking. So you paid for everything, but the deed transfer was never completed? She clarified. Yes, they kept putting it off. And they're listing it for $850,000? I could hear her typing. Who's listed as the property owner on the tax documents? Me, I said. I've been paying the property taxes too. They said they'd reimburse me, but Patricia's voice softened. Honey, you still own that house. Legally, it's yours. I felt dizzy. But I promised them? Promises aren't deeds, she said firmly. And they're trying to sell your property without your knowledge or consent. That's fraud. The word hit me like a slap. Fraud. My baby's grandparents were committing fraud. I spent the next 4 hours gathering evidence. I printed bank statements showing my payments for the construction. I found emails where Diana had specifically thanked me for our forever home where we'll watch our grandchildren grow up. I even found the listing online, complete with professional photos taken when I wasn't around, and a description that mentioned moving to be closer to family in Florida. They didn't have family in Florida. When Michael got home from work, I was sitting at our kitchen table surrounded by papers, my eyes red from crying. "What happened?" he asked, panic in his voice. "Is it the baby?" I silently handed him my phone with the listing pulled up. He stared at it, confusion turning to disbelief. "This is my parents' house? They're selling it? Your parents' house?" I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "The house I spent my inheritance on? The house that's still legally in my name because they never signed the transfer papers? That house?" Michael sat down heavily. "There must be some mistake. Call them," I challenged. "Ask them yourself." He did, putting the phone on speaker. I'll never forget the way his face changed when his father answered and Michael asked, "Dad, are you and Mom selling the house?" A pause. Then, "Who told you?" "That? We were going to surprise you. The market's hot right now, and we can make a killing. We're thinking of getting a condo in Tampa. Much better for our arthritis." "You were going to surprise us?" Michael repeated. "When? After you'd moved?" "Don't take that tone with me," Robert snapped. "We're not children. We don't need your permission to sell our house." "It's not your house," I said loudly enough for him to hear. "It's still in my name." Another pause, longer this time. Then Diana's voice came on the line. "Is that Caroline?" "Sweetheart, we were going to tell you after it sold. We didn't want to stress you with your condition." My condition, like pregnancy, was a terminal illness. Besides, we thought we'd give you a little something from the sale, for the baby. Maybe $50,000 for a college fund? $50,000 out of a $420,000 profit for their grandchild's college fund. How generous. "We'll see you at dinner tonight, right?" Diana continued, her voice honey-sweet. "I'm making that spinach lasagna you love." Michael looked at me, his face pale. I nodded. "We'll be there," he confirmed, then hung up. "They're lying to us," I said flatly. Michael ran his hands through his hair. "Maybe they just, I don't know, maybe they need the money for something important. Like a condo in Florida?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "That's more important than the house I built for them? Than being near their grandchild?" "I'll talk to them," he promised. "I'll make them understand." But I already knew what would happen. Michael had never stood up to his parents in the entire time I'd known him. They'd manipulated him his whole life, from choosing his college major to pressuring him into a job he hated but that paid well enough for them to constantly borrow money. Money they never repaid. I made a decision then. I didn't tell Michael because I loved him enough to protect him from having to choose. Instead, I called Patricia back and asked her to draft 2 documents. A formal notice that I was revoking any intention to transfer ownership of the property, and an eviction notice giving them 30 days to vacate. "Are you sure?" Patricia asked. "This will cause a serious rift in your family." "They caused the rift when they decided to sell my parents' legacy behind my back," I replied. That night, we drove to Robert and Diana's house, my house, legally speaking, for dinner. Diana greeted me with a hug, her hand resting on my baby bump. "How's my grandbaby today?" she cooed. "Active," I said, forcing a smile. "Definitely has Michael's soccer legs." Dinner was surreal. They chatted about nursery themes and complained about their neighbors as if they weren't planning to be 1,000 miles away by the time their grandchild was born. Robert even asked Michael to help him replace the backyard fence soon, knowing they'd be gone before the first post was set. After Diana served coffee and her famous tiramisu, Robert cleared his throat. "So we have some news." He reached for Diana's hand, both of them beaming. "We've decided to downsize. The house is just too much for us to maintain at our age." Michael tensed beside me. I squeezed his knee under the table, telling him without words to let them finish digging their grave. "We've listed the house," Diana continued, not meeting my eyes. "The market's incredible right now. Our agent thinks we could close by next month." She turned to me, her expression suddenly concerned. "We know this might seem sudden, but with the baby coming, we thought it might be good for you two to have some financial help." "Financial help," I repeated, my voice steady. "Yes!" She looked relieved that I seemed to be taking it well. "We're setting aside $50,000 for the baby's college fund. Isn't that wonderful? And maybe a little something to help you two with a down payment someday." Michael finally spoke, his voice strained. Mom, Dad, this isn't right. Caroline spent her inheritance on this house, for you to live in, not to sell. Diana's smile tightened. And we've appreciated it every day. But circumstances change. Your father's arthritis is getting worse, and Florida's climate would be much better for his health. Florida, Robert chimed in. We've been researching Tampa. Great area, lots of activities for seniors. When were you going to tell us? Michael asked. Diana patted his hand. We're telling you now, sweetie. We wanted to wait until things were more certain. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope Patricia had prepared. Actually, I said, setting it on the table, I have some paperwork for you too. Robert frowned, reaching for it. What's this? Since you never signed the deed transfer documents, the house is still legally mine, I explained, my voice calm despite my racing heart. Inside, you'll find notice that I'm revoking my offer to transfer ownership, along with an eviction notice giving you 30 days to vacate the premises. The silence was deafening. Diana's face went white, then red. Robert's hands shook as he pulled out the papers. You can't do this, he finally sputtered. This is our home. Actually, it's my home, I corrected, paid for with my dead parents' money, the money that was supposed to secure my child's future. Diana turned to Michael, tears already streaming. Michael, are you going to let her do this to us, your own parents? Michael looked wrecked, torn between the two sides of his family. But instead of answering his mother, he turned to me. Did you know about this before tonight? I nodded. Ella, their real estate agent, called me by mistake. She thought I was the homeowner. I smiled thinly. She was right. Diana's tears vanished instantly, replaced by fury. You sneaky little... Mom! Michael cut her off. You were selling the house behind our backs? You were taking Caroline's inheritance and running off to Florida. And you're calling her sneaky? Robert stood up, pointing a finger at me. We've done everything for you two. Everything. And this is how you repay us? By making us homeless? I laughed. Actually laughed. You have $27,000 in your savings account. I know because you showed me the statement when you were explaining why you couldn't afford new living room furniture last month. That's more than enough for a rental deposit. Or are you only homeless if you can't live in a house that someone else paid for? Michael reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. I couldn't tell if he was supporting me or trying to calm me down. Maybe both. Get out, Diana hissed. Both of you. I stood up, cradling my belly protectively. Gladly. You have 30 days to do. The same. Updated. Thanks for all the supportive comments. For those asking, yes, their faces when I pulled out the eviction notice were absolutely priceless. Diana looked like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. Several of you asked about Michael's reaction when we got home. That conversation was complicated. He wasn't angry at me, but he was definitely in shock. Have you ever had to be the strong one when your partner is falling apart? The drive home was silent. Michael white-knuckled the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I could almost hear his thoughts racing, trying to process everything that had happened. When we got home, he sat on the edge of our bed, head in his hands. I can't believe they did this, he kept saying. I can't believe they would. Behind our backs. With your inheritance. I sat beside him, my back aching from pregnancy and stress. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the eviction notice before. I didn't want to put you in that position. He looked up, his eyes red. You don't need to apologize. You did what I should have done years ago. Stood up to them. He placed his hand on my stomach. I've been letting them take advantage of us, of you, for our entire relationship. I just never thought they'd go this far. That night, as we lay in bed, Michael's phone buzzed constantly. Texts from his parents, ranging from rage to guilt trips to desperate bargaining. He silenced it finally, turning to me in the darkness. What do we do now? He asked. We protect our family, I said, placing his hand on my belly where our daughter was kicking. Starting with her. The next morning, Diana showed up at our door, tears streaming down her face. Please, Caroline, she begged. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought, with the baby coming, you wouldn't need such a big house for just the two of you. I stared at her, marveling at her ability to twist reality. You listed the house for double what it cost to build. Were you planning to give us that money? She hesitated. Well, not all of it, but exactly. I started to close the door, then paused. By the way, I've removed both your names from my hospital visitor list. You won't be meeting your granddaughter until you acknowledge what you did and offer a genuine apology. Her face hardened. Michael would never allow that. As if on cue, Michael appeared behind me. Actually, Mom, it was my idea. You need to leave now. The next few weeks were a nightmare of flying monkeys. Michael's extended family calling to berate us for making his parents homeless. Friends taking sides without knowing the full story. Even our neighbors asking awkward questions about the family drama they'd overheard. Robert and Diana refused to leave, insisting we'd need to formally evict them through the courts. So that's exactly what we did. Patricia filed the papers immediately. The process would take time, but the message was clear. We weren't backing down. Meanwhile, I was entering my 8th month of pregnancy, exhausted and stressed. My blood pressure started creeping up, concerning my doctor. After a particularly tense appointment, Michael made a decision. We're separating our finances, he announced that evening. I've already started the process. New accounts, new credit cards, everything. I blinked in surprise. What about your parents? They're always asking you for money. That stops now. His voice was firm. I've also taken a week off work. We're going to stay with your Aunt Judith until the baby comes. The stress here isn't good for either of you. Aunt Judith lived an hour away in a cozy house with a garden full of birdhouses and a spare bedroom that smelled like lavender and old books. She welcomed us with open arms, no questions asked. The first night there, I slept better than I had in weeks. The court date for the eviction was set for 2 weeks later. I was almost 36 weeks pregnant by then, uncomfortable and ready for this chapter to end. Michael insisted on representing us, despite Robert and Diana bringing their own lawyer, paid for by who knows what credit card or loan. The judge was an older woman with silver hair and reading glasses that sat at the tip of her nose. She reviewed the documentation in silence, occasionally glancing up at both parties. Let me get this straight, she finally said. Mrs. Walker provided all funds for the house construction. The property is in her name, no deed transfer was ever completed, and the defendants listed the property for sale without her knowledge or consent. She looked at Robert and Diana over her glasses. Is this correct? Their lawyer shuffled papers. Your Honor, there was a verbal agreement to gift them the house, the judge interrupted. Not for them to sell it for profit, correct? Silence. Eviction granted, she ruled, slapping her gavel down. Defendants have 14 days to vacate the premises, court costs to be paid by the defendants. Outside the courthouse, Diana made one last attempt. She approached me, her eyes brimming with tears. Please, Caroline. Where will we go? What will we do? We're too old to start over. For a split second, I wavered. Then I remembered how they'd planned to abandon us, to take my parents' legacy, and disappear to Florida without a second thought. You have $27,000 in savings, remember? That's more than enough for a rental deposit. I repeated my words from that night, then added more softly. And once you're settled, if you want to be part of your granddaughter's life, you know what you need to do. 2 days later, I went into labor, 3 weeks early. The doctor said it was likely stress-induced. 26 hours later, Emma Rose Walker entered the world, 6 pounds, 4 ounces of perfect screaming life. Michael called his parents from the hospital, despite my reservations. You have a granddaughter, he told them. Her name is Emma. If you want to be in her life, you need to make things right with Caroline, a real apology, and a promise to respect our boundaries going forward. Robert hung up on him. Diana texted later. Congratulations, we're still your parents, Michael, even if your wife has turned you against us. Michael showed me the text, then blocked their number. 18 months later, I sit in my small but cozy living room, watching Emma toddle after a butterfly in our fenced backyard. We sold the house, my house, and split the money, half into a trust for Emma that neither we nor my in-laws can touch until she's 25, and half toward a modest 3-bedroom home closer to Michael's work. Not the craftsman of our dreams, but a place of our own, free from manipulation and lies. Michael and I went through 6 months of couples therapy, working through the damage his parents had done to our marriage. He finally recognized the patterns of emotional manipulation he'd been subjected to his entire life, and set firm boundaries I never thought he'd be capable of. Robert and Diana didn't give up easily. After being evicted, they left on day 14, taking fixtures and appliances with them despite the court order not to. They launched a smear campaign, telling everyone who would listen that I had stolen their home and was keeping their grandchild from them. For a while, it worked. Michael's extended family stopped inviting us to gatherings. Friends who'd known them for years took their side. But slowly, the truth emerged. Other stories of their manipulation came to light. Michael's cousin revealed they'd borrowed $20,000 for emergency medical bills that mysteriously coincided with a European cruise. His childhood friend recalled how they'd convinced Michael to give up a scholarship to a prestigious university because family stays together, only to complain for years about supporting him. 6 months ago, Robert called Michael, his voice uncharacteristically humble. We've been doing some thinking, he said. Some therapy, too. We may have made some mistakes. It wasn't a real apology, but it was a start. We agreed to a supervised visit at a neutral location, a park near Aunt Judith's house. They brought gifts for Emma, watched her play on the swings with tears in their eyes. She looks just like, "You did at that age," Diana told Michael, her voice wistful. Before they left, Robert pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "What we did was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive us, but we'd like to try to do better." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It would take more than one stilted apology to rebuild what they'd broken. But for Emma's sake, I was willing to try. We're taking it slow. Monthly supervised visits, no overnight stays, no unsolicited advice about how we're raising Emma. Michael stays vigilant, ready to cut contact again at the first sign of manipulation. I do believe people can change, but I also believe in protecting what matters most. Last week, Diana asked if she could bring Emma a special doll from her own childhood. "It's not expensive," she added quickly, as if sensing my hesitation. "Just something meaningful," I agreed. When she handed it to Emma, I saw genuine emotion in her eyes. Not manipulation, not calculation, just a grandmother who finally understood what truly mattered. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Ella hadn't called me by mistake that day. If we'd discovered the sale after it was too late, after Robert and Diana were already in Florida with my parents' money, where would we be now? Would Michael have stood by me? Would Emma know her grandparents? I don't have those answers. What I do know is this. The house my parents' money built wasn't just walls and a roof. It was a test, one that revealed the true nature of family, the boundaries of love, and the strength I never knew I had. Emma calls for me now, her little voice, excited about something in the garden. As I step outside to join her, I feel a sense of peace I haven't known since before my parents died. We're building something here, something real, something honest. A home, in every sense of the word. Updated. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. Some of you asked if I regret building them the house in the first place. Honestly, no. That house taught me who my in-laws really were before my daughter was old enough to be hurt by them. Now we're setting the terms of our relationship instead of being manipulated. Would you give your in-laws a second chance after what they did? Or are some betrayals too big to forgive?